Hello, everybody. Good evening and welcome to another Wednesday night Bible study here at Faith Baptist Church. We are live tonight on Facebook, we are live on YouTube, and we are live on TikTok. So very glad to have all of you in here this evening. If you guys have any prayer requests or anything to share, be sure to leave a comment and I'll read it out for everybody and try to make sure that everybody knows to pray for it. So tonight we're going to be talking about 1 Samuel 30. It's one of my favorite stories, the Siege of Ziklag. The title's a bit of a spoiler, but it's a great story. It's the story just before we get into the tragic end of King Saul. So we got some really good stuff we've been leading up to. Hope you guys have been looking forward to it and enjoying it. These Wednesday night series, they're for those people who would love to just dive in head first and really analyze these stories. Good evening, Ryan. Good to see your name pop up. Hope you're having a fantastic day. So yeah, that is what we're going to do going forward. I do have, let's see, just a few people to pray for. I know Liliana's still a little under the weather. Be in prayer for those traveling during the holidays. I know my great aunt Beverly will be traveling tomorrow, so be in prayer for her. I know this, actually they've already left, right?
Yeah, they left Tuesday.
Yeah, they left yesterday. JW and Christy Hendricks left to go pick up their new, is it a mobile home?
That's a camper.
A camper, okay, I'm sorry. Their new camper to travel around in. And so be in prayer for their safe traveling. Trying to think, off the top of my head, I don't see anything else. I don't remember anything else. So be in prayer for those. If you guys have something else, or if somebody knows of something I forgot about, let me know, and I'll let everybody else know. So let's, I think we're good. Let's go ahead and jump over to our Bible study. There we are in 1 Samuel chapter 30 this evening. And the story, like I said, is about the siege of Ziklag, pursuing the enemy. And we're going to start right here in verse 1. And we're going to just break it down, read a little bit, stop, talk about it. It says, "It came to pass when David and his men were come to Ziklag on the third day, that the Amalekites had invaded the south, and Ziklag, and smitten Ziklag, and burned it with fire." So you'll remember in chapter 28, 29, David is dealing with the king of the land he's living in now, the king of the Philistines. And this is because Saul has chased him out of Israel. This is where he has to be. It's not where he wants to be. And so he's trying his best to survive in this land and to keep the peace with the king of the Philistines. And he even agreed to help the king of the Philistines fight their battles. And the king said, basically, I don't fully trust you. I don't want you to turn on us in the middle of the battle. A lot of our other guys are worried about it, so you're just going to have to stay back. So they travel back home to Ziklag, and they find this scene. Their home, Ziklag, this is the place where they lived. Their home had been invaded. Their houses and all of the buildings there were burned to the ground with fire. And don't worry, it gets worse. It says in verse 2 that they had taken the women captives that were therein. They slew not any, either great or small, but carried them away and went on their way. So there was no dead to bury, per se, but they were taken captive. Now that is tragic and awful, and I can only imagine what those women, and I can only assume children as well, might have been dealing with and going through, but they were alive. And that's an incredible thing. However, when David and his men came into the city, and behold, it was burned with fire, and their wives and their sons and their daughters were taken captives. So at this point, David and his men, they don't know, right? They don't know that everybody's still alive. And that's kind of a huge deal. because they think everybody's dead. Could you imagine? How would you react if you went off to follow your leader and when you came home, your family was gone and your house was burned to the ground because you weren't there to help defend it? How tragic that would be. So this is kind of what they're dealing with. Not kind of, it literally is what they're dealing with. It says that then David and the people that were with him lifted up their voice and wept until they had no more power to weep. That's an incredibly powerful statement. Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate that. But yeah, it's an incredibly powerful statement being made here, that these men wept. You usually don't hear about grown men, especially tough warriors, weeping. But these men not only wept, but they wept until they were physically unable to weep anymore. Have you ever cried so much you just didn't have the power to cry anymore? Your body just lost the strength to continue weeping. That is what David and these men were going through. Their whole purpose had been taken away from them. And for all they know, forever. And they're dealing with this incredible pain and loss. And it says in verse 5, David's 2 wives were taken captives, Ahinoam the Jezreelite and Abigail, the wife of Nabal the Carmelite. So if you want to hear about that story about his 2 wives, read chapter 29, and that'll explain all of that to you. But we've kind of talked about this thing a little bit. Hey, thank you so much, Ryan, for the like. I appreciate that. But we've kind of talked about this thing a little bit of what David did that his son would take to an excessive amount that would forever poison, forever curse the nation of Israel. Right? So, and we'll see this as time goes on. What happens is David marries the first time, right? But his wife is tragically ripped away from him because of everything that happens to Saul. So he remarries. And then he finds Abigail, the wife of Nabal, who's a Carmelite. We read about her in the last chapter. And something tragically happens to her husband, and then he marries a second time. Well, then we're going to read a little bit of a spoiler alert, but we're going to read later on when he actually does become king, he takes his first wife back as well, and now he's got 3 wives. And that's 2 wives too many. And you'll say, well, that's your opinion. No, as a matter of fact, it's not my opinion. It's Bible. The Bible says that these kings especially, and it mentions these kings specifically, were not in any way to take for themselves multiple wives. And you'd say, okay, Pastor, where does the Bible say that? Where does the Bible say that these kings were not supposed to take multiple wives? Well, actually, we can find the proof of that in the book of Deuteronomy, if I can find it. I want to get the chapter and verse for you, and I want to show you this because it's very, very important. It's very, very important because there's a lot of people out there who use these stories as a reason to justify marrying multiple wives. And they say, well, the Bible never says it's a sin. And as a matter of fact, you can see in the Old Testament where all the kings married multiple wives. And what they don't take into account is, there it is. They don't take into account the fact that the Bible did say that the marrying of multiple wives was a sin in the eyes of the Lord. So let's real quick dip over to Deuteronomy 17. And we're going to see right here in verse 17, it says... let's start in verse 14. It says, when thou art come unto the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. So we're talking about the promised land. Good evening, Sylvia. Okay. We have our first internet. This is exciting, guys. If you guys in YouTube see this, you can see it's a very exciting moment for us. We have our first internet troll. Hey, how exciting is that? Our first internet troll who thinks no one cares about the Bible or learning about the Bible, whose YouTube name is Why You Cheating TM. Now, I assume that has something to do with either a video game or you've been cheated on. In which case, either way, I'm very sorry for you, but people do care, and I'm sorry you feel that way. Now, we'll say here in verse, where were we at? Verse 14. The funny part is they literally don't have to be here. Right, that's how an internet troll does, as Ryan knows very well, is that they will come into a place and try to get under somebody's skin, right, and try to pick a fight with somebody so that, you know, for some reason it thrills them to ruin somebody's day. He's not going to ruin I'm a Baptist pastor. I've heard everything he could possibly say. Like, there's no way he's getting under my skin. He's barking up the wrong tree here. Yeah, I play Valorant. There's no way he can get under my skin. That's funny, Amanda. Anyway, he says, when thou art come into the land which Lord thy God giveth thee, that's the promised land, and shall possess it, and shall dwell therein, and shall, I am sweating so bad, and shall say therein, I will set, oh, I wish that hadn't gone off. Anyway, I will set a king over me, like all the nations that are about me. That's literally what we've been studying. The chapters about Saul becoming king and so forth, that's literally what happened. So God is telling them what was going to happen way ahead of time. That he knew all this was going to take place. Did not catch God off guard. Nothing catches the Lord off guard. Nothing catches the Lord off guard. Hey, my English worked. Enjoy the message. You may have a good time. Yeah, you guys don't interact with the internet troll. The rule number one of being on the internet is do not feed the internet troll. And Ryan says at least he's boosting our views. I mean, true. That's true. By the way, you guys don't forget to like the stream, and that super helps us out here. Thank you to Amanda and Ryan for already doing that on Facebook at least, which is the only one that... No, I'm sure you probably did it on multiple places, but that's the only one that'll actually tell me for security purposes. But anyway, thank you, all you guys who support. Okay, it says in verse 17, he shall multiply horses to himself. He shall not multiply horses to himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt, to the end that he should multiply horses. For as much as the Lord hath said unto you, ye shall henceforth return no more that way. So this is Deuteronomy. So again, he's letting them know this is the direction that things are headed. And in verse 17, God says about these kings that will rule over them in the promised land, neither shall he multiply wives to himself. Right there. Neither shall he multiply wives to himself. Get this, that his heart turn not away. Right there. Deuteronomy 17:17 says they were not supposed to take multiple wives. Right there in the book of Deuteronomy, hundreds of years before this takes place in 1 Samuel. So we've seen it right there, black and white, plain as day. David knew better. David knew better than to marry multiple wives. And yet he does it anyways. So he's got these two wives here in verse 5. They've both been taken captive, and it's tragic to him. But what I wanted to focus on for just a minute was what David does in moderation here. And I call it moderation because what Solomon does later is certainly excess. It's excessive to have 3 wives. But it's even more excessive to have 700 wives and 900 concubines, which is what Solomon had. And that turns his heart, the Bible tells us, from worshiping the one true God to worshiping multiple gods. Right, so that is tragically the way things happen. So we see this taking place throughout the stories, and when Solomon, the stories of the Bible, and when Solomon and his heart turns from God, it sets a precedence. And what you have following that is a king who will obey the Lord, and then a king who won't. And then a king who lives a life pleasing unto the Lord, and a king who openly disobeys God. And drags Israel away from the Lord. And back and forth throughout the rest of their history, they never recover from this until the paganism and the sin in Israel gets so intense and so bad that God has to lead them into exile and literally destroy their nation. And all happens because of what David does here without any thought. You'd read this and have no idea that this is what will ultimately destroy Israel. It's tragic. But his 2 wives are taken captive, and he's greatly distressed about it. We see there in verse 6. For the people spake of stoning him. So not only is his family gone, not only are his people hurting, but then we see that his men are so angry at him that they're about to murder him where he stands. Now, we've had bad days before. I've had some extremely bad days before. You have probably not had a day as bad as this. Verse 6, it gets about as bad for David as it's ever been. His mentor has chased him out of his own home, out of his own home nation, has tried to murder him many times. He can no longer speak to his best friend. He's lost his beloved wife. He's remarried twice, lost both of those wives. His home has been burned to the ground. All of his men are hating him and wanting to kill him. It literally has done nothing but got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse for David. And a lesser man would break. He would say, I have done nothing but the right thing. I have made all the right choices. I have done all the right things. And no matter what I do, it seems like I get punished anyways. A lesser man would break. But David does something incredible. I mean, this is almost miraculous to me. And instead of breaking, the Bible says that David, right here at the end of the verse, David encouraged himself in the Lord his God. That's incredible. He went off and he got with the Lord and he encouraged himself. He said, okay, Lord, I'm in another pickle and I'm going to need your help. If we're going to restore anything or anybody, I'm going to need your help. And it's an incredible thing that David did here in verse 6. So then in verse 7, David said to Abiathar the priest, this is Ahimelech's son. This is one of the priests that has been following him since Saul basically lost his mind. And it says, I pray thee bring me hither the ephod. And Abiathar brought hither the ephod to David, and David inquired at the Lord, saying, shall I pursue after this troop? There's your right answer, right there. Should I do this thing? Should I not do this thing? When you don't know, you go to the Lord. You know what the problem has been for Israel in the past is when they go into battle, they don't stop to check with God first. Because they're supposed to stop and say, Lord, is it your will that we join in on this battle? Or is it your will that we do something different? And God will give them their strategy and then they go forward with it. The problem has been in the past that they just jump into battle and expect God to make up the difference. And God says, that's not how it works. You serve me, not the other way around. And they get in trouble. David does exactly the right thing here. He's discouraged, he's upset, and he says, I need to go to the Lord. And so he goes to the Lord and he says, okay, God, do we go or do we not go? So many times in our own lives, we could take the same advice. We could say, okay, Lord, do I go or do I not go? Do I take this position? Do I move to this place? Do I commit to a relationship with this person? Do I make this decision or not? Lord, I'm coming to you and I want you to tell me because I want to do your will. When we do that, the Lord then guides us. And you say, yeah, but the things don't ever seem to work out for me. Well, look at David's life. David, like I just said, had gone from bad thing to bad thing to bad thing to bad thing to bad thing and is still trying to do God's will. Because he knows in the end, all things work together for good for them that love God. He, talking about God, answered him, pursue, for thou shalt surely overtake them, and without fail recover all. Now, they're not going to recover all because the buildings were burned to the ground. So how is it that God is saying recover all? Well, for one, the all that matters here is the people. You can rebuild buildings, but you can't replace those people. And that's an encouraging thing for us as well, because sometimes we have setbacks in life, don't we? We have car trouble, or we have trouble at work, we have trouble with our friends, or our family gets mad at us for something, there's drama. It always seems like the devil's constantly after us, trying to cause trouble. But what's encouraging to us are the days where we lose something, but it can be restored. Those are encouraging problems, because sometimes loss is something that can't be recovered. And those are tragic days. You grieve and you mourn on those days. You take a minute, you take your breath, and you be sad. There's a time for that. But when our problems are something that can be recovered, we can be restored, we shouldn't be too worried about it. We say, I still have my people in my life. I have my family in my life, my friends in my life. I at least can be grateful for that, because these cannot be recovered. They can be lost forever. The things that David and his men had lost, it can all be recovered. Homes can be rebuilt. Lives can be rebuilt. But people cannot be replaced. We see in verse 9, it says, David went, he and 600 men that were with him, and came to the brook Besor. My mouse moved a lot there. Where those that were left behind stayed. It says, but David pursued, he and 400 men, for 200 abode behind, which were so faint that they could not go over the brook Besor. So what has just happened here is that David brought 600 men to go recover all, like God had told him. But they get to a certain point in their journey, and a third of their party, of these warriors, had become so tired they couldn't keep going. Evidently, they had been running and chasing and pursuing for so hard, for so long, that a third of these men were just about to fall over from exhaustion. They just couldn't keep going. So David allows them to stay behind, but him and 400 men, they keep going. They keep pursuing. They don't stop. Listen, guys, sometimes it's gonna be tired. It's going to be tiring work. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. You're going to have days where you wake up and you just want to give up. Call it quits and throw in the towel. And we have to come to a point in our own life where we say, I'm not going to give up. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I feel like I'm doing this all by myself. The devil sometimes makes you feel that way. And you say, though no one join me, still I will follow. We've got to be like David. We get tired, we get exhausted, we get faint, but we keep going. So in verse 11, they found an Egyptian in the field and brought him to David. And they gave him bread, and he did eat, and they made him drink water. And they gave him a piece of a cake of figs and 2 clusters of raisins. And when he had eaten, his spirit came to him again, for he had eaten no bread, nor drunk any water 3 days and 3 nights. Now we're gonna talk about all this, but I want to get to this point here in verse 13. David said unto him, to whom belongest thou? And whence art thou? He said, I am a young man of Egypt, servant to an Amalekite, and my master left me, because 3 days agone I fell sick. We made an invasion upon the south of the Cherethites, and upon the coast which belongeth to Judah, and upon the south of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire. So now David knows he's got a man on the inside. And David said unto him, canst thou bring me down to this company? And he said, swear unto me by God, he evidently knows the name of their God, that thou wilt neither kill me nor deliver me into the hand of my master, and I will bring thee down to this company. So the next verse is him doing exactly what they just said, which means David must have agreed to this. But notice all they did for this Egyptian before they knew he was anybody of importance. All the things that they did for this servant before they knew he was servant to somebody who had sieged Ziklag and had information that they needed. They gave him bread. They gave him water. They gave him cake, y'all. They gave this guy cake. You know how rare cake was in 1 Samuel 30 time? They gave him cake and 2 clusters of raisins. That's the closest to candy that they were going to get back in that day. They gave him all of this stuff. And he hadn't eaten any bread or drank any water 3 days and 3 nights because his own master abandoned him and left him for dead like a useless piece of equipment that was no longer useful to him, and left him to die alone, God knows where. But when David meets him, he does all of this for him and has so much compassion and generosity toward him. Now, they knew he was an Egyptian. He wasn't a Christian man. He didn't worship the one true God of heaven, and yet they were still compassionate toward him. And they still helped him. Why? Because that's the right thing to do. The right thing to do was to help him out. And that's exactly what they did. Gosh, so many times, you guys, so many times in life, I've seen Christians who have the opportunity to help somebody out, but instead they won't help them because they're not a Christian. I was watching a TikTok today of a guy who was talking about this is going to make some people mad. Hey, thank you so much for that again, Amanda. I don't know why it went off again, but it says you liked a few seconds ago on Facebook. That's weird. Anyway, he said, I know this is going to make some of y'all mad, but you should let her have her baby shower at the church. She may have not conceived in the way the Bible says she should have, but you making her life more difficult and shutting her out and glaring at her every time she comes to church is not going to help that baby. He says, you guys call yourself pro-life. There's still life in that person who's decided to have this baby. And instead of helping her, you treat her this way. And let me tell you guys something. That's not Christian. I'm telling you, myself, that's not Christian. And what we see here in 1 Samuel 30, when they meet this random Egyptian guy and they give him all this stuff and help him in all these ways, that's Christian. We see David destroy his enemies mercilessly several times throughout the Bible. We saw him decapitate Goliath. Right? When he's sent to an enemy, he utterly destroys them. And yet he's still capable of such compassion and generosity as this. I find no better picture of Christ in all the world than this. Than to say that he's capable of great destruction and great fierceness and wrath. And yet he chooses first and foremost to show to us compassion. He offers to us salvation if we want it. And it's such a generous thing that happens here. Such a picture of Christ that we see. But we see, verse 16 says, when he had brought him down, the Egyptian brings David down. Behold, they were spread abroad upon all the earth, eating and drinking and dancing because of all the great spoil that they had taken out of the land of the Philistines and out of the land of Judah. So they think they're safe, they think they're secure, and they've lounged back and taken it easy and spread all their stuff out, and they're dancing and partying and everything. Is the way we find them, with their guard down. And in verse 17 it says, David smote them from the twilight even unto evening of the next day. As David and his men whooped up on these guys literally all night long. That's an incredible thing. It says, there escaped not a man of them, save 400 young men which rode upon camels and fled. So 400 young enemy soldiers immediately hopped on the camels and rode off. Those we call those the nope camels. I see David and the Israelites attacking, and they're like, nope, out of here. David, the Bible says in verse 18, recovered all that the Amalekites had carried away. And David rescued his 2 wives. And there was nothing lacking to them, neither small nor great, neither sons nor daughters, neither spoil nor anything that they had taken from them. David recovered all. And David took all the flocks and the herds which they drave before those other cattle and said, this is David's spoil. So not only did he recover everything he lost, but then he gained some more that he took from this siege. So he left this horrible day, this awful situation, he left it better than he started. Because he trusted in God, he prayed to God, he had faith, and he followed through with what God told him to do. In the middle there, when God calls you to something and it seems like it's not working out, it'll be easy to throw in the towel. But we, like David, we got to encourage ourselves in the Lord. We got to keep going, and God will bring us to a place where we can say, we recovered all. Right? All the things that we could recover, God gave to us. And it may not always feel like that, but it's true. Another thing I want to mention to you is God's people were prepared. They were ready. They were diligent, and the enemy, they laid back. Can I tell you something? We have an enemy that's not going to give us a moment to rest. You let your guard down, the devil's going to come after you. He's going to come after you hard, and he's not going to hold back. He's going to use anybody who makes themselves available for his abusing of your soul. And it's not going to be fair, and it's not going to be right, but the devil's going to come after you with everything he's got. And it's in those moments, and every day you've got to be diligent, and you've got to be ready for those assaults. And you've got to be able to handle them to the best of your ability in all the ways that the Lord teaches us, because when we prove ourselves diligent and we win these battles, we come to these places like at the end of Ziklag where we've proven ourselves faithful to God and he's blessed us for it. You prove yourself faithful to God, he's going to bless you for it. I guarantee that. Well, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. That is our Bible study for tonight. Thank you everybody who was here. Ryan, Sylvia, Amanda, those are the names that I saw pop up. Other people are here too, I'm sure, and I appreciate you as well. But we will be back on Sunday morning for our candlelight service. There's not going to be a Sunday school. It'll be our special Christmas candlelight service. So you're not going to want to miss that. That's a really special service. I'm very excited about it. We're getting some stuff ready. And so be prepared to listen to the Christmas story. There's going to be some Christmas hymns being sung in between there. It's going to be a really special time. And we will see you guys then. So until then, guys.